Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Hello and welcome to Growing Edge Live. I'm Allie Benjamin, and it is my great joy to be here today. As you can see, for those of you that are watching, I've got my guest right here next to me, Linda Frazee. And Linda, we're going to get into you in just a second. I want to say welcome to all of you that are watching or listening. Some of you are here for the first time. Welcome. I know that you're going to find something really helpful today as you join us on this conversation. And for those of you that are here back again for more of Growing Edge Live, I'm really grateful that you're here. And I know that you too will enjoy this conversation. Each Monday, I come on this platform and it spreads out onto Facebook and YouTube. And I have conversations with soul-centered individuals that channel their time, talent, energy, their resources, their creativity into doing good work in the world. My guests come from all walks of life, whether it be an author, an artist, a therapist, a counselor, a minister. It goes on and on. But my guests are usually very creative, and they're focused on helping and supporting other people in one way, shape, or form. And today, my guest, Linda is a very, very close friend of mine. Her and I have worked together for several years now. I have worked very closely with Linda in therapy, and she is my teacher of the Enneagram. And I can't thank you enough for being here today, Linda, but even more, thank you for the so many ways that you've helped me, support me in overcoming grief, in supporting me with life challenges. And one of the brightest, biggest things in my life at the moment, which is the Enneagram. And I so value your teaching, your wisdom, and your support that you've given me and my family over the course of some very challenging situations. So thank you, Linda.
Well, you're welcome, Allie. It's always a pleasure to work with you in any way. And I hope that this will bring what we talk about today will shed some light on some of these issues about aging.
Yeah. Let me read a little bit about you for my viewers that haven't seen you before. I think this is your third time on. Yes. So if you'd like to know even more about Linda and the Enneagram and the things that we do and she does, you can go back and look at prior episodes. So Linda is an international workshop leader, a professional life coach, and co-author of the book Full Heart, Satisfied Belly. That's a great title. She is a certified Enneagram teacher and has been using this personality system as a primary tool in her work with others for the last 25 years. Linda has over 40 years experience working with individuals, businesses, and the government to improve relationships and increase productivity. Her professional training is in transpersonal psychology and imagery, and she has been in private practice in Colorado, Maryland, and currently in Scottsdale, Arizona. Her primary message is recognizing the importance of the connection between mind, body, and emotions for satisfaction and success in every area and aspect of life. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here, and we've got this topic, which is mastering compassionate aging. And we came up with this title, and you've been putting quite a lot of energy and attention in this river of energy here, compassionate aging. And so I'd love, before we jump into that, for those that are here that are new to the Enneagram, I think it might be important to share a little bit about that, because it is so integral to the work you do.
Sure, I'd be glad to. And it's a big subject, but I'll give the Reader's Digest version. This is a typology that is ancient and is spiritually motivated. So unlike some of the others, like the Myers-Briggs or the DISC or the Genius ones, or there's a whole bunch that are out there. This one is one that may seem very superficial on the surface, but is very rich and deep. And it's ancient wisdom. It's been handed down through the ages and then refined in modern times over the last several hundred years by prominent psychologists, psychiatrists, and people who, and mystics. So it embodies all the different kinds of spiritual teachings, the Kabbalah from the Jewish, from the Christians, from, the Sufis. It's really wonderful. And it's been around in modern America probably now. I actually ought to look that up. I'd say, it's been very popular for the last, say, 60, 70 years, and has spread across the United States and across the world. And I do believe that currently it is the number one way to understand yourself. However, it's for serious seekers. So today we're going to just scratch the surface of the different types. And there's 9 different types that are, part of the plan is that when someone is interested in this, they look to find themselves to figure out which pattern and their motivation has been running them throughout their life. And if you're somebody who's done a lot of personal growth work, sometimes it's harder to find yourself because you've been self-correcting for the last many years. And if you're someone who's never done any personal growth work, it may be difficult because in finding your type, we invite people to go into a deeper look at themselves and ask some questions that they may never have asked themselves before.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So you've worked with the Enneagram, with your clients, and teaching courses on this for a long time. What do you see as the benefits for people to know the type they lead with or understand? What are some of the things that you've seen that in your clients that has been so helpful?
Well, it's interesting because of our title today about compassionate aging. The very first thing is developing some compassion for yourself, which is really critical because it's hard to have a lot of compassion for other people if you don't for yourself. And as I said, there's no type on the Enneagram. One is not better than another. Everyone has gifts. Each one has challenges. And so for people who have never done any deep work with themselves, it's very easy to be very self-critical. Everybody's got an internal critic, but some people who have never really looked at that have been beating themselves up in a very painful way for their whole life. And so learning that, there's a pattern that goes on. There's a genetics. This is genetics that meets family of origin, that meets self-talk, that meets circumstances in life. And you know what? I have the power to change that. I have the power to shift and change it. So the benefit is really understanding that, number one, you're not alone, that other people have this same way of thinking and being and doing and patterns. And number two, there's a path of growth that the Enneagram offers that many types don't. I taught the Myers-Briggs and the DISC in corporate America all across when I was on the speaker circuit many years ago. And it was very useful, and it still is useful. But it doesn't really go to the deeper level of why do I do what I do instead of just what do I do. The second big benefit is in relationships, whether it's at work or at home with your kids, with your grandchildren, with your next door neighbor. The more compassion we can have for other people and understanding they really don't look through the same eyes we do, the less conflict, the less friction, and better relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think compassion is something that really bubbled up for me. Not that I wasn't compassionate before I knew about the Enneagram, but it gave me this greater sense of, my husband sees things and takes things in so differently than I do. And my children, 3 of them, also different. And now I'm not now I'm more able to see that they're motivated to do certain things or respond in a certain way. And that's different than me. And so learning the different aspects of the personality has given me this great feeling of relaxing a bit. Like I'm not as in my ego when I'm in a relationship. I'm more centered in my soul or my essential self, and that brings naturally a feeling, an energy of compassion into my relationships.
That's a very good way to put it, into your soul, because of course we all have an ego, and we have to have an ego. It's like the coating, the outside coating that kind of protects all that soft underbelly. However, we don't want to be run by it. And a lot of the world is just unconsciously. And that brings up another point, because we're going to be talking about aging today. And the more that you are conscious of how it is you are going through life, how you're seeing it, how the patterns that you have, the more able you are to deal with things that come up. And aging is something that's going to come up. It's not something you can avoid. It's not like something, well, I think I'll just not do that, And so, so if you're completely surprised by it, wow, how did this happen? It's harder to deal with.
Yeah, I can see that. So very fundamental to this conversation, and we're here on New Thought Media Network, and New Thought is really based in, as is the Enneagram, the idea of awakening, like waking up. And I've understood, I've thought I've understood what this means, and I've studied, I'm a minister myself, and I've studied other religions and traditions. And so there's definitely this sense of waking up to our higher self. And I love talking about this. I love practicing meditation and reading materials, spiritual material to have this awakening happen and to be more clear about it. And so that's been going on for me for decades. But when the Enneagram came into my life 4 years ago, I think it gave me more of a sense of what I'm waking up from. Mm-hmm. And also because there's 9 different types within the Enneagram, there's these personalities that get formed in 9 different ways that we as humans seem to fit into one of these 9 buckets, so to speak. And so it, as a mother and as a counselor, I found it very helpful in understanding what that personality structure is for my children, for my clients, for myself, and then being able to speak in very specific terms to that personality. Even though there's 9 personalities within the Enneagram here, there's only one waking up to that one central self. And so it does offer 9 different sort of themes or ways or pathways to get to this waking up. So can you speak a little bit to the idea of the Enneagram being a tool or a pathway to waking up, awakening?
Certainly. I think that that each one of us, as I said, has a pattern that we've been following, and a way of looking at life, looking through those lenses on our eyes. And the typical example is that we all have a different colored lens on our eyes, and we really do think that that's the way the world is. And most people, until they begin to wake up, don't realize that other people are looking at it differently. So there's a lot of growth that you can do in a variety of ways, just as you've mentioned. But that capacity to just get, oh, wow, if that simple thing is probably the biggest thing that any kind of typology test that you take, and we don't believe in tests with the Enneagram, which is another story, but or awareness. I'd say anytime you can find yourself and discover that pattern you're in, the biggest thing is to realize other people really don't think about life the way I do. They don't see it. It's literally as if we are sitting at a coffee table, all looking at the coffee table, and there's 9 of us, and we all have these different colored lenses on. So from a standpoint of awakening, until you realize that, you're much more judgmental of other people, and that whole thing like, well, why aren't you doing it my way? It would be so simple. And why are you getting so defensive? Because I just made this suggestion. There's an obvious way to do this, which really means do it my way. And because that's the way I do it. And why wouldn't anybody do that? And so because of that, it really is, it allows for the possibility of peeling that off. And I would say that it's a good companion. The Enneagram is a major, wonderful companion with any kind of new thought kind of philosophy. It's taught considerably in the Christian faith. It's taught in the Catholic Church. Any kind of spiritual development also has to involve how we get in our own way. And the Enneagram shows that.
Mm. Maybe this would be a good time to introduce the 9 different types. Can you do that very sort of briefly? Like,
Sure.
Give us a snapshot of these 9 different personalities.
Absolutely. I'll just go around it very quickly. And so those of you who have not heard of it and want to follow up on it, you can look at my website or any website. There's a lot of information online about the Enneagram. So the 1 is sometimes called the reformer or the perfectionist. And the lens they're looking through is, if I can be perfect, then I will be a good person and I'll be loved. And so they really strive and have the capacity to do that. They have the capacity to kind of pony up to rules and regulations and know what's right and wrong. They have a great talent for looking at things that could be better. And so they have this lens that's just saying, oh, well, that's good, but let's do it better. They make wonderful quality control people. They're engineers that make sure our bridges are safe. They fly our airplanes, always want to have one flying an airplane that I'm on. And so because they are very content to look at all those kind of things. On the other hand, because they have higher standards than the average person, until they learn this, that's where the lens they're looking through, they can feel very often resentful of other people and just and can be really judgmental of other people who aren't doing it the right way. The 2 is the helper, and their focus is not on the right way. Their focus is on helping other people. And they have they're like a heat-sinking missile about anybody who needs help. And they will dive in, even diving in when the person really didn't need help because they're imagining they need help. And so that can be a problem. So, but they're doctors and nurses, healthcare workers, therapists. There's a lot of 2s out in the world doing wonderful work. I'm sure you've had a lot of them on your shows, Allie. And again, they can overdo it. And not only can they overdo helping other people, they can be so busy helping other people that they forget to help themselves, and they don't even know it. So their own needs can suffer. The 3 is called the performer. And they're out wonderfully doing wonderful things in the world, very highly motivated, a lot of image, very often professional speakers and people who are out, your TV show hosts, and many people might be a 3. A lot of actors and actresses are 3s. And they do a wonderful job of getting things done. They are just absolutely productive beyond any means. But much like the 2, they will go and go and go and go and go and do and do and do and do with just completely forgetting their needs. And they can get exhausted. So, and they also have a good talent that can be used in a positive way. They can morph. So they're great car salespeople. They're great salesmen of all types because as they walk up to somebody, they can kind of tell who they need to be, and they can be that person naturally. They don't have to learn it. That's just there. And that's the good news. The bad news is other people will look at them and go, who is that? They're acting differently with everybody they go to. So they have to learn to come back and be just sincere and authentic with themselves, which is their challenge. And the 4 is called the individualist. It used to be called the tragic romantic because I'm a 4. Now he is 2. We don't like that term, and it has been pretty much removed because it was judgmental. So the But the 4 is all about feelings, can feel all the feelings, and that's wonderful because they can be with people who are suffering. If you're in a bad place, you want to have a 4 friend because they will sit with you forever. They're just with you, and they will be really with you. The feelings don't bother them. And so there are a lot of therapists, a lot of, really good nurses around in their ICU, things like that. That really have a lot of compassion for the people. However, on the other side, we can be dramatic. We can, so again, we could be good actresses. Allie, you and I could go on the stage, although you wouldn't want to. So we can be overly dramatic and get caught up in grief. And so can everybody, but 4s have a special propensity for it. The 5s are called the observer. They like to stand back and watch. That's why the observer term is there. Usually very smart. They want to be the smartest person in the room. They research. They are just absolutely gathering information at a fast pace. And they are very intellectual usually. And important for them to be, one of their motivations is to be smart, because otherwise they have a lot of fear that's really pretty much hidden by everybody. They hide it from other people, but the way it manifests is they stand back and watch. Their challenge is that they can stand back and watch so much that they can get isolated. The 6 is called the loyal skeptic, and they are planners because they have the most fear of any on the Enneagram. Now, all types can have fear. All types can have anxiety. So it's not like the 6 is the only one, but they are always looking at the worst case scenario. So they have a tendency to be great planners. And oddly enough, many 6s are policemen, firemen, nuns, in the military, because those are all places where there's a lot of planning and training, and you supposedly know what you're going to do. And the interesting thing further about that is they also, on the opposite side of their strength, the challenge of their fear, is that they are very courageous. And they will jump into the fire if there's a fire going on. They will jump off the bridge to save the child. They'll do whatever is necessary because they're prepared, because they're always watching for what could go wrong. They're ready. The next one is the 7, and the 7 is also a fear type, which is a little deeper issue we probably won't get into today, but they just are the opposite. They're fearless. And so they go the other way, and they are adventurers, and they like a lot of stimulation, a lot of fun, and they want to stay away from any messy feelings that might come up. And so they're great entrepreneurs. They can look a little ADD because they, like, well, there's a squirrel, because their mind runs very fast. And so their challenge is to focus on one thing at a time, and accept the fact that all of life is not just fun, that there are, unfortunately, and that's a problem with aging with 7, so we'll talk about a little bit later. So the whole idea is that yes, you can have fun, you can do wonderful things, and there are these messy things called feelings that do come up now and then that have to be dealt with yourself or with others. The 8 is the one who wants to be in control, is a protector. They are protector. They're great leaders. They are big energy people, out and about and getting things done in a big way. One of their whole mottos would be fire, ready, aim, fire. Theirs is fire, and then maybe I'll aim. So there's a lot of action. So they get things done. Some of our military leaders probably, if we did a survey, and I haven't, from the standpoint of from Custer on, they've probably been a lot of 8s in there, because they command people and they get things done. Sometimes successfully, sometimes not, but they actually have a very commanding presence, and people follow them. So that works really well in many situations, and in many situations it doesn't, because they can be considered intense. They can be reactive with anger, and they have to learn to kind of tone that down, because they're trying to keep hidden their vulnerability. And then last but not least, we have the 9s. They're called the peacemaker. And the peacemakers are the soft energy of the person who, again, much like the 2, goes along to get along, and, is really wanting to just be there for other people, to respond to other people. They're not searching. They're not seeking like, okay, who needs my help? But they do respond if asked. And that's because they're moving away from their own agenda. Their own agenda, whatever that might be in life, maybe to get a new job, maybe to get married, maybe to find somebody to marry, maybe to, pick up their prescription at the pharmacy. Maybe it's to fix their car that's breaking down. It just kind of gets lost in the background because, oh, there's a fun thing to do. So it looks a little bit like a 7, but the motivation underneath it is just, let's have it be peaceful and calm. And so in that effort, they can lose their own agenda and not take the best care of themselves as well. Mm-hmm. So that's a very brief overview.
Yeah, that was really great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So today we've got this topic of mastery and compassionate aging. When was it that you thought to blend these two things, aging and compassion, and why?
Well, that's an interesting question. I actually looked up I went online and asked Enneagram and Aging, and my site came up. So I was like, oh, okay. So apparently, and I don't remember the date, but I'm saying 5 or 6 years ago, I did a podcast or a program on Enneagram and Aging. And it came to my mind at the time because I work so much with individuals and businesses and groups about aging, and because I'm aging, and much of my population of my clientele is aging. And so I'm hearing a lot about complaining. When I was a kid, I had a grandma and an aunt who came for the Thanksgiving dinner every year. And the first thing they would do when they sat down at the table is start talking about their aches and pains and, who died and and what they were afraid they were going to get. And my father would every time it was this family pattern would say, okay, enough of that. We're not going to talk about that. And yet now I find that when I'm talking to my friends, I'm going, my left knee hurts, and how is your right foot, and all of this, and it just makes me laugh that when you're young and you see that, you go, oh gosh, what's wrong with these people, and then you encounter it. So I think there was a little bit of personal awareness about that just on my side, and then of course my clients. And I have some clients who age so beautifully and so well. It's just really inspirational. In fact, I'm going to do a program with 3 women who are all 90 and are just absolutely go-getters for inspirational. One is a 7, and she just recently became a coach. She went and got trained to become a coach. Another woman who's 90 has had a business in Scottsdale, Arizona for the last 20 years and is just a going Jenny. And another woman, my next door neighbor in Phoenix, plays games all day long because she's retired and she has to be doing something. She's a 1 on the Enneagram, so she has to be the scorekeeper and all of that. But her mind is sharp as a tack, and she's out there playing games. So I'm going to have these 3 women talk a little bit about what's inspired them, and none of them have had a real easy life. It's not like they had this path with no resistance or no problems. They've lost children, they've lost grandchildren. I think all 3 of those are widows, just so happens. And so it hasn't been an easy path, and yet they've gone on with their life and they've done well. So I have been more and more interested in that. And of course, in our whole America, you've probably seen some of the things on the news where fewer people, younger people having fewer babies, and there's more and more of us that are aging. So that's a long answer to your question. That's how I got started on that. So I looked at my old 5-year-old program that I did, and I pulled some things from that, and then I put some more things together for us today.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to diving into this because, like you said, we're all aging. And I too remember sitting around with the elders in my family and thinking, oh my gosh, here we go again. They're talking about this, we're talking about that. And yes, then it happens. You age. And then here I am in my 60s. And when I call my friends that I haven't talked to in 6 months or so, that's typically what comes up, is what, our health. And so, yeah, I'm really interested in diving deeper. I'm really looking forward to hearing the 3 90-year-olds that you have coming up. That should be really interesting. So before we get into all of that, we're going to take a very short break, and we will be back with Linda Frazee.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
And we are back. So, Linda, I want to know when you started thinking about this and preparing for this conversation that you're having with these wonderful 90-plus-year-olds, what is it that you started to see that was like core or central to mastering aging with compassion? And I could add other words like with joy and with creativity and other things.
Well, I actually have 7 different things that I want to just mention that I have observed through the years in working with people. The very first thing is the personal model you have about aging. So if your parents aged well, if they kept going, if they enjoyed life, if they accepted the fact that they had some limitations, but they continued to laugh and enjoy themselves. And I don't mean laugh every day, but I mean they were pretty conscious about what was going on, took care of themselves. You probably have a better shot, no matter what type you are on the Enneagram, of aging well yourself. Now, when you're a kid, you look at movie stars. And of course, now movie stars, get all this plastic surgery, and they show Cher, and she's as old as I am, or maybe even a little older, and she looks like she's 22 or something, And so, if you spend a lot of time looking at that, then you wonder, oh gosh, what I'm really behind the curve, and that really doesn't work at all. So that's the first thing, is your personal model that you've had with the people you grew up with. That you really watched and grew and knew. And if you have some good models in your life who really enjoyed it and have done well, that's a plus. The second thing is your unconscious beliefs about age and what it means. So there are a lot of people who are out there playing golf, but they're complaining the whole time. They're just negative about, I can't play golf as well because my left knee hurts, or my right ankle is sore, or whatever. So it isn't just about what you do. It's about how they present that. It's like there's so many negative things about it's a bitch to get old, for instance. Well, it doesn't have to be. I mean, it's inevitable, but it's also a bitch to die, really young, and then you don't have to worry about it. So watching your language, being conscious of that is another thing. The next thing is how attached you are to your physical image. This goes back to the looking at the movie stars. If you're someone who is still seeing yourself as you were when you were 20 or 30, and you look in the mirror, you're going to be disappointed because hardly anybody looks the way they did when they were 20 or 30, and you're not supposed to. That's in fact, I've got a brief story about that. In Scottsdale, Arizona, grocery store I used to go to all the time. There was a woman in there, and I just had to just make myself say, don't get involved, don't get involved. This woman would come in, and she literally, I think she was 90. She had long white hair that she had in a ponytail. She had on spandex pants and, some kind of real revealing sort of top and high heels. And she's walking around the grocery store and lots of makeup. And I just wanted to go to her and say, hey, honey, give it up. That day is past. And she didn't even, I'm sure she didn't realize it. And I saw her 2 or 3 times. And every time I thought, I really should give her feedback. And I thought, it's none of your business. So I didn't. But that's an example of why we're trying so hard to look the way we once did. And that's an image that we're attached to that we can't let go of. And that really doesn't work. So that's a point. Then number 4 is your general attitude toward adaptability and your resilience. So unfortunately, the more you've gone through and you've made it okay and you're on the other side, the better resilience you have. None of us like to have gone through a lot of things, physically, emotionally, mentally. But if you have, then you survived. And even though you may have some symptoms left, you're okay. And that includes your consciousness. Because sometimes people go through these things and then they're bitter and they're resentful and they're unhappy, and that works against them. Obviously, having and allowing for emotional and physical support. A lot of people are ashamed if they have a physical thing, like there's something wrong with me, and so I'm not going to tell anybody. Even in my family, my extended family, there's people who they have problems they won't even tell their kids. Because they want to be private and they don't want to trouble them. And I can see some, you don't have to tell them everything that happens every day, but the ability to really get support is really important. And another one that's really important is the ability to grieve and release sadness. Talked about that, Allie, and I know about that. Allie and I have both lost, one of our children. And I don't even know if you know, Allie, I lost many babies. In fact, carrying a baby that had died, I carried it in the womb for 2 more months, knowing that it wasn't alive.
Wow.
Very young. So I'm not happy about that. Of course, I wasn't at the time, and I'm still not now. However, there is, the more that you have, the more you get through things in life. It does really begin to create, it can begin, it doesn't always, give you some resiliency. So, and then last but not least, and a very important factor is your Enneagram type. Now, what your Enneagram type has to do with this is each one of these things that I've gone over, each type has a propensity to fall into one of these areas and not do so well because of it, whether it's the 3 with the image or the 4 with grief. But there's also strengths. Each type has a strength that can get you through that. So before I go into that, do you have any questions or anything you want to add to this before I go through some of that?
No, I think it's great because everything you were talking about before you said knowing your Enneagram type, all of those things were, I could see that these are, we all are going to have an opportunity to age. We're all going to have, we've all had a history, whether we've had a lot of grief or illness in our experience. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about how the specific types, what their strengths are with coping with aging, and what some of the traps or the struggles they might have.
Yes, well, and so that it's the bad news is we're going to age, and we can't stop that. The good news is that every Enneagram type has strengths and experiences to bring to the art of aging with grace. And so I want to start out with the 1. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and to remind those of you who are not familiar, the 1 is the reformer or the perfectionist. And let me tell you, when these people, I've asked a physical therapist often, How are your clients about following up with, when you go to a physical therapist, they give you these exercises. You're supposed to go home and do them 3 times a day or something. The only one on the Enneagram who will absolutely do that is the ones. I mean, they have a schedule. They go home. I don't care if they work all day and they're going to do it again. Get up at 5 o'clock in the morning or stay up until 10 or 11 at night to do it, because they are rule followers and they know. And so if somebody tells them to do something, they'll do it. So that's the good news and the bad news, because they also are the ones who are most inclined to follow the right diet, to exercise. If you're supposed to have so many steps, they'll do it. But what happens when that doesn't work? Because they've done what they're supposed to. I have a client back in Phoenix who is a 1 on the Enneagram, and she, all her life, very athletic, moving her body, eating the right foods, very careful to all this, and she came down with Parkinson's. And it just devastated her, because how could this be when I've done everything right? So the grand illusion is, for this one, that if I do things right, I certainly won't age and I won't have problems. Now, the strength that the 1 has is because when they go to the doctor and the doctor says, okay, now you got to take this pill and do this and that same strength that they were using before, they can use again. And so, and the possibility of the spiritual growth is that there's divine perfection that isn't about everything being perfect. So that's for the 1s. The 2s are so busy helping others that they can ignore their own health. They don't even know they have health. They don't even know. They have a hard time with boundaries. So, and holding their own boundaries. So if they're supposed to not eat ice cream, or they're not supposed to, or they should take this pill at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they have a tendency just to forget. Not because of the 9, like just forgetting themselves, but because they're focused on somebody else. Well, what do you need? Oh, I've got to go to work. I've got to do that. So the very thing that is, so that's their weakness that can get them into trouble. But their strength is that they love to be with people. So if you get a 2 that's got a coach, a therapist in a group, boy, and you can motivate them by saying, we really love you. We really want you to be around. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be here to be with us, which they hear is to help you. They will do it. So now, one of the things that 2s can do, and we all can, but they have a kind of a corner on it. They can somatize their grief, because there's 3 types on this in the Enneagram that are positive types. Like, everything will be all right. We'll never have a problem with this ever again, and this is okay. And so they can just get so busy on the positive side of things that they can take that grief in. And so they're one of the types that has to learn how to grieve. And really be with the sadness instead of somatizing it, which means taking it into your body and holding it. The 3s are so fast-paced, they're running around doing, raising their hands. I can do this. Sure, I can do that. They have a schedule that will, just exhaust anybody just by hearing about it. And so they don't notice the gradual breakdown. They're so busy performing and being out there, and performing doesn't mean on a stage. It might be, but sometimes 3s are, they're going to be the best mother there ever was. They're going to be the best street cleaner. That if they're a street cleaner, it doesn't matter what the profession is, they are going to be the best. So highly motivated, because that's how they believe they will get love. So that's the underlying motivation. Then they get really irritated when they get sick, because they have to slow down. And so all along, something may be gradually showing up, and they just run over the top of it. So that's a problem. The strength is that they can turn the negative focus of that Energizer bunny to one who takes care of themselves. That if they apply it, if they just take that energy, if you can just imagine, just like a flashlight, this light just going over to another place, not just productivity, because they are very inspirational. They are inspirational people. And so if they can get into, if I can do this, then I can help others. And this is another way I could make a difference in the world. And they do have to dare to share their grief with others, because they want to always be up and they don't like to be down or in grief. So learning to share their grief and have their grief is another thing for the 3s. Now the 4, which, as I said, Allie and I both share this type, the individualist can get lost in the victimhood or the pain or the discomfort, and also not want anybody to see it, because that wouldn't be unique and special, which is a big thing for a 4 with that. And so and it's hard to feel unique and special when you're uncomfortable. So there's a conflict when that happens. So really beginning to get out of the victim role and find out that deeper meaning of life has not gone away, because the 4s we're looking for the deeper meaning. And in fact, you could even find it could even deepen, if by embracing just this is the way it is. And again, they have to make sure they work through their grief and not get stuck there. I always say, don't pitch a tent in the valley of despair, because this is true. There may be pain and angst and all, but keep going. And their willingness, the great strength of the 4 is a willingness to share their feelings and ask for support with the right people. The 5 it has a tendency to isolate when they feel in pain or any kind of word. So that works against their healthy aging. And the belief that they can research and find the answer to physical and emotional pain, plus cutting themselves off socially, can add more difficulty. And then the fear can work against them. So 5s have a challenge of moving their bodies. Maybe we all do, but 5s have a specific challenge with that. But hiking and being in nature is really good for a 5, because there's nobody to push back on. That they don't have to be an expert. They can just be out there and they can feel it. So that's a wonderful thing for them to do. Just be in nature and calm themselves consciously and calm their concerns. Now, their strength is that they are astute at gathering information, and they can, in fact, discover what works best for them. And if they trust a professional, coach, therapist, or doctor, physical therapist, they can get motivated to take care of themselves as they age. They do have to trust. We all do. But some of the more positive types, like, oh, the doctor told me to do this, this is just fine. But, the 5 is a more skeptical, mind-based type, logical. But if they find somebody they trust, they will do well. Now, we mentioned a little earlier about the 6, which is kind of looks at the worst case scenario, and it's called the questioner. They question things because they want to make sure they get all the answers. So they can go down 2 different ways. In fact, I have 2 different 6s. I've had 2 6s in my life, in my family, that it's really interesting. One of them was so skeptical of doctors that they could be in terrible pain and they wouldn't even go, because it's an authority issue. 6s have a lot of authority issues. They don't trust. And so how would I know if you know what you're doing? If a 6 has gone to a doctor and the doctor says, well, I really don't know what that's about, that's like, oh, see, why did I even come? And I had to pay you because you don't even know what's going on. So that's the counterphobic 6. The phobic 6 is going to every doctor on the planet, knocking on the door, trying to figure out how to get over whatever they're dealing with. And so you can go one way or the other. And they have lost trust in themselves and get into their body. So this is a place where consciousness really works. For somebody to do meditation, for somebody to be able to go inside and say, what is wrong here? What do I need to do? They may not have the diagnosis, but they may know where to go, what to do, maybe stop eating raspberries. Who knows? It's just a matter of being able to be their own authority. But because they have such an authority issue, sometimes they don't trust their own authority. Mm-hmm. So you can see how that can get in a way. However, their strength is learning to use these good skills of research and skepticism for them finding what works best for them and who to trust in the process. So it's just the opposite. So that courage that I talked about earlier, the courage to really trust the right people and to trust that they will find the right people to help them is really important. And then we have that adventure, the ultra positive. This is one of the other positive types that doesn't honor health issues or aging because it gets in the way of their lifestyle. Underlying issues can get ignored and brushed off. Aging can be awareness, although not always. It can bring awareness, but not always. And the willingness to slow the pace of distraction and travel so the joy of the moment can be felt and sustained. Now, that just doesn't happen in one fell swoop. That's something they have to really work on. But their strength is their positive attitude. And once awakened, consciously awake, to the fact that their bodies must be honored. They can use their humor, their good attitude to keep their spirits up, and usually they have a lot of friends usually and people who will help them because it's easy to be attracted to a 7. Then we have the protector, the 8. Well, being strong is such a focus for an 8 that aging could be a real irritation. Just being sick, having a cold is an irritation. So aging is just like, how could this happen to me? This is just not okay. And so not being as physically strong as they had been and being vulnerable, which, they don't want to ever be vulnerable. And what can you do if you're sick or you can't move the way you used to? It rattles their cage. 8s are usually the type who've had hips replaced, knees replaced, shoulders replaced because they've been pushing them bodies over and over, because not only is it physically important, it's important to be physically strong, emotionally strong. It's a part of their image. And so they really push it. And they have to learn to accept their vulnerability, which they will, fight and bite. It's like when I say it rattles their cage, it really does. But they can learn that their vulnerability is really their hidden strength. Because any 8, how big they are, even if their energy is big, they are a teddy bear inside. And they have to they have to be able to touch into that and own it. And that's a strength. And another strength that they have, kind of like the 1s, is they have a natural tendency to take action. And if it's positive action, which would be a good idea, then they are someone else who's like, I mentioned, like the 1s are more likely to follow orders. Now, the problem is that because they're so action-oriented, especially men, I find, like that want to go out on the weekend and play touch football, and, they're 60 years old and they're not in good shape. And so then they pull a tendon or they do something, and you would think, okay, so, and then they go through rehab in some way or not get it fixed. And you think, okay, so now they've learned, no, the next time touch football, I'm in, and they're back again. So they have to learn to protect themselves on a physical level during the natural process. And again, and that means they have to admit that they're just not the way they were when they were 20 or 30. And last but not least are our sweet 9s, the distractible peacemakers. And they often say they don't know how they got to be so old. It's like something that happened that they didn't even recognize as it was unfolding. It seems to them that only yesterday they were 20 or 30 years old. I mean, and how could I be this old? However old, much older they are. And sometimes we all feel like that. But 9s tend to forget themselves in epic proportions, forgetting to go to the doctor or pick up the prescription or take the prescription when they've got it. And it may seem like the 9, well, what happened? Why can't I walk now? What happened? To many 9s, aging is a rude awakening that they didn't see coming. Their strength is that with coaching, therapy, a group, or friends, they can and often will express and stay on purpose. But they do need help. It's just like they've kind of been in the ozone. So kind of in conclusion of all of this, which is a lot, and I'm going to be interested in what you have to say here as we conclude today, aging is obviously something we can't avoid. Ignoring it doesn't work. Fearfully focusing on it doesn't work, and it's not healthy. So having some solid plan for future possibilities when you may not be as mobile as is advisable. Finding a middle ground and following healthy advice is easier than done. It's easier said than done, but it's the best daily plan for every Enneagram type. And then I've got some interesting quotes I'll just give you, so that I like Eleanor Roosevelt. So the longer I live, the more beautiful life becomes. Wow. And Franz Kafka said, anyone who keeps the ability to see beauty never grows old.
Those are beautiful quotes. And all of that is really interesting because you categorize these 9 ways, but really as someone that's been studying the Enneagram, someone that's been very interested in awakening from some of the, more unhealthy aspects of my personality, someone that wants to live more aligned with my soulful self, I can see that there's wisdom from each of these 9 types as we start to age, as we start to slow down, as we start to kind of take a look and like, wow, look at this long life I've lived. Entering into a new chapter, who do I want to be? How can I gracefully age and still feel, in alignment with my true self? And I think it must be, for so many people, this stage of life, let's say 60s, 70s, where you are doing this kind of taking an inventory and trying to figure out what's the next chapter going to feel like and look like and be like for me. It's a time where we can actually do it by design rather than by, not taking care of, planning for the future, but actually thinking about, I am slowing down, maybe meditation, maybe I learn more about that. So I guess there's things that I heard throughout you sharing about some of the challenges different types experience and some of the gifts that I'll be taking into consideration. So what would you say all types, all people, regardless of their type, I guess, what can we do to have a more peaceful, centered, vibrant, impacting presence? What can the Enneagram teach us in general? And I guess where I'm headed with this is, I think of the three types, the head types, the heart types, and the body types. And I've found great comfort and insight in considering these three aspects when I'm thinking about how do I want to organize the next few chapters of my life and who do I want to be moving forward. Because we are thinking beings, we're feeling beings, and we're doing beings.
Right.
So I think those three centers of intelligence can really help inform us as we're planning for our, mastering our aging with compassion.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I thought about, adding that in. So I'm glad you're saying this now. So briefly, I would say that the mind types really can use that strength of their ability to search and get information, but they have to embrace their bodies, because the mind types can get so busy with their minds that they can kind of forget they have a body. And so being able to really honor that part of them and their heart. We can all get so busy in our professions, whatever those are, and focused on what we're doing, that we forget about the things that really in the moment bring sensitivity and compassion and quiet. That old thing about people sitting on their front porch in a rocking chair. Well, I'm doing that. That feels really good, And so I'd say that all of the types, overall, the Enneagram, I'd say, find out what your pattern is and how it blocks you from really enjoying every day and in a deeper way, so that you can actually enjoy it and be with it, even if you have aches and pains, even if you have whatever other things you think you have. I don't just mean think you have, you feel. And there's so many people who are inspirational who've gone through horrendous things. I'm sure you know many of them, Allie. We both have. You and I have gone through many difficulties. But on the other side, again, that resilience, build resilience. I'd say also watch out for hanging out with people who are just so negative. Like, oh, I'm just so old now, I can't do this or that and the other, And there are some things. There's a financial thing, like to travel while you still can. Well, that's true. It's not easy to go on a flight to Egypt, let's say, and go down the Nile, at the older you get. But so if you're younger, go do it. Do what you can do while you're here. That doesn't matter what type you are. And, I want to add a personal thing here, which I debated whether I would here at the end or not, but I'm going to. I have something new on my hand. I got engaged yesterday.
Oh, Congratulations. Oh, that is
So
wonderful.
I'm 78 years old. I'm going to be 79 in just a few months. I'm marrying a man who's 76. We're both, he was a widower, I'm a widow, and we're starting our life out together now. And
Well,
there are a
that's
lot of,
amazing. Congratulations, Linda.
well, thank you. But there are a lot of people who would say, well, now what, that's crazy. Well, why are you doing that? We each have various health challenges that we have to work with, but why not? Why not?
All right, we're right at the end. Thank you so much. This has been so great. And thank you, New Thought Media Network. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing